Welcome to Checks and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And this week, what is a mortgage broker?
So this week's topic, Mike, what is a mortgage broker? It's going to be quite tricky for us not to plug your services a lot, but I think the purpose of this episode is to say, this is what the bank offers, this is what a mortgage broker offers, opposed to, if they come and talk to you, that's great. But for those that have an existing relationship, those that, I don't know, decide to use somebody locally, whatever it might be, they understand the pros and cons.
Yeah, and I also think that for someone who has a banker and they're using their banker as opposed to a broker, there's still really good information here to take out of this. So, what you expect from a mortgage broker, you can also ask for from a banker. In my opinion, it may not be as good, but it is something that you can sort of ask for and expect and ask further questions and get a little bit more out of them.
Well, the other thing to point out is if the banker's good, they're probably going to be a mortgage broker in 6 months, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And if there is any bankers watching this, Mike is hiring mortgage brokers.
Always.
Please come and talk to Mike.
Always, absolutely.
Yeah. So while this is quite closely related to what we do for a job, the idea of today is not to be a personal plug, but to say this is the services that a mortgage broker offers. These are the good things. These are the things to watch out. And when you go and engage, you're much better informed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So today I will be asking the question. Mike will be giving the answers. And when Mike thinks he has the answer, I will change the question, as the great Roddy Piper said. So
well, you can't be too you can't be too specific, because we're going to do a part 2 of this where we look at financial advice and James's side of the ledger.
Yeah, that's right. I should be nice to you. I don't think it's in my blood to be nice to you, Mike. So I think
no, it's not. Yeah.
So the first question, Mike, is really simply, what does a mortgage broker do?
Yeah. So, and a really simple answer is we get you the money. So, look, a mortgage broker will work with you and engage banks on your behalf to get you a mortgage or lending or some type of finance that you need. And, a lot of people think they're there to get me the best interest rate and they're there to get me the most cash back and all this sort of stuff. And absolutely, a banker will negotiate that a broker will negotiate that on your behalf with a banker. But what a mortgage broker really does is get you the most money. So that's really important when you're in the market, especially at the moment where prices are going up and up and up. And if you go to a banker, they might say, you can borrow X and that's it. Whereas if you go to a mortgage broker, they can say, well, you can borrow X here, but you can borrow more here and more here and more here. So it's really about getting you the most amount of borrowing at that point in time, so you can get the house you want and sort of get into either an investment or an owner-occupied property.
And it's important to point out as well, Mike, that just because you're going to get them a pre-approval for more than what they hoped, that doesn't mean they have to use all the money, right?
No, it doesn't. But what I don't like seeing, and this is the way I operate with my clients, is I get them the maximum amount and then tell them, like, here's the extent of your borrowing capacity at the moment. You can just work backwards from here, right? So if you don't spend it all, perfect. Your LVR is lower, you've tipped in more deposit, or you can do this, this, and this. But the other thing we sort of look at there is giving guidance around these sorts of things. So, it's a really funny thing, right? And you and I talk about this quite a bit on our webinars that we do with people. All of a sudden one day you're just expected to know how to buy a house, and it's sort of like, if no one teaches you how to do that, who do you ask? And absolutely, you should be able to ask a banker, but quite often they don't have the time and they can't give you the same advice as a mortgage broker, which means that you're going to come up a little bit short. So mortgage brokers can give you guidance around and coaching on, how to buy a house. What does the mortgage application process look like? What does the bank want to see? What should you do leading up to a mortgage application? Should you drop your expenses? Should you, trim some of the fat, as it were? How does the house buying process work? What should you look out for? What is a sale and purchase agreement? What do you need to look out for on that? How to engage with estate agents, how to engage with vendors. And there's a whole lot of coaching that goes around that, which is really good for first home buyers getting into the market and trying to find that house, because it can end up saving you a lot of time. And I know you and I have both been to a number of open homes on the weekend, which is fun for the first weekend and the second weekend. But then after that, it's completely horrible. And what you want to do is just really cut down on that stress and that time and that wasted energy in the house buying process. And a good mortgage broker should be able to guide you through that and save you a bit of hassle there. And likewise with first time investors, mortgage brokers are really good for first time investors. You hear a lot of people in the market saying, I'm buying this house and this investment property and this new build and this. And speaking to a mortgage broker, we can give you some guidance around that, how to make that leap to being a property investor, what type of properties you should be looking at. Is it growth? Is it yield? Is it a new build? Is it an in-situ property? So yeah, we can give a lot of coaching and guidance around that sort of thing.
It seems so simple, like if you haven't bought a house before, to say, like, you think about it and go, why do I need coaching on how to buy a house? You give me the money, I find the house, I give them the money, and they give me the keys. And
Yeah.
I could completely understand why somebody would think that, but
Yeah.
I've been in, and there's a whole range of different components to this, but I've been in auction rooms before where I've gone, oh, you don't know what I know, and seeing like, the mum jumping up and down next to the son who's a first time buyer, and they keep going higher and higher, and I'm like, you don't know about the rotten wall in the garage that's going to cost a couple $100,000. You don't know about the unconsented works and that it's a cross lease and the amount of admin associated. So you're right, Mike. Like you think about it, you go, oh, like come, and we'll talk about the other benefits in a second. But you look at it, you go, oh, come on. But in reality, it's the biggest purchase you're ever going to make, right?
Yeah, and I think that, I'll give you a live example. Got customers at the moment who are buying an apartment in town. They got a price given to them, and that was sort of what they were looking at purchasing for. And I was having a chat to them, and we've got the pre-approval, working through all of that, and I sort of said, look, now's the time to negotiate. And they said, oh, look, he gave us a price, and sort of came back, and didn't want to throw in a car park with the apartment and this sort of stuff. And we ran through it with them. And I was like, look, what you need to do is go back with a lower price and explain why you're going in with a lower price. It doesn't have a car park, it's X, Y, Z, this sort of thing. Justify it. And then, see what comes back. They'll say no, and you end up at a higher price, but at least there'll be some negotiation. And what we actually ended up on was a slightly lower price, but with a car park included, right? And it's a funny thing, because I do this every day. I know when to negotiate, and I know what that looks like and this sort of stuff. And it's just things like that we can give you a little bit more coaching around it to sort of help you through the process.
Well, when you see people settling on homes every day, you know what value is in the market and what's not value, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, just little things like when you're in an auction room, they say the deposit has to be paid tomorrow. And then people ask, I've got my KiwiSaver for the deposit. How do I do that? Yeah, it says that, but here's what it actually means and that sort of stuff. So it's this sort of thing that we pick up and take a little bit of the stress off there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what are the other advantages of using a mortgage broker?
Yeah. Well, I guess the main advantage is probably less work for the customer. You do one application with the broker, and we take it out to multiple different banks, or not all the banks. We take it to the banks that we think will suit you best, to get you sort of more money. Really important for, pretty much everyone, whether it's first home buyer, investor, some of the more complex stuff, especially if you're looking at buying, funding developments and these sorts of things, or, maybe you need money fast to jump on an investment project and that sort of thing. We're really good at doing that. The other thing we really can sort of offer is leveraging our connections in the market. So whether that's leveraging our connection with developers, QS, solicitors, these sorts of things, really just to help you, I guess, through our network, get things faster, cheaper, easier, this sort of stuff.
Okay. And do all banks use all mortgage brokers? I mean, do all mortgage brokers use all banks?
Yeah. So each broker will have a list of banks that they work with. The main one that either people do or don't work with is probably Kiwi Bank, because they're a little bit more selective about their brokers and have a more limited range of brokers that they work with. But most brokers work with most banks, and that is third tier, second tier, first tier, main bank, these sorts of things, near prime lenders. And that network of lenders is really important when you're looking for finance.
And I think for people who are new to the process, maybe you've just had one relationship with a bank before, the idea of being with a non-main bank is quite intimidating. But there's a lot of things to like about, for some customers, those second-tier lenders, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a really sort of good point. Is when people think second tier, they think, save my bacon, instant finance, 1,000% interest rates, these sorts of things. It's absolutely not like that anymore. Once upon a time, it probably was. But these days, they are very competitive rates, very good to work with. They're a lot smaller than the main bank, so easier to table a deal with. And that can be a real advantage, especially if you're a developer looking at some of these, or starting to leverage up for investments, starting to look at some of these second tier lenders. They have easier credit policy. You can work through a deal with them on a personal basis to make sure that it gets across the line if it's a little bit out of the box and that sort of thing. So yeah, using a broker for second tier lenders is a really good idea if you don't fit into that first tier box.
Yeah, I think that out of the box piece is really important. Those second tier lenders, maybe you have really good equity, but the income is a bit of an issue, or vice versa. They don't look at things as you've got to fit in this box. There's case by case, actual proper credit writing underneath it.
Yeah, and that's, if you look at things like we're doing a large development in the North Island, and it's just under 2 mil of funding. It'll be 5 mil when the development's complete and that sort of thing. And taking that to a lender, and we can shop that to a specialist lender who can look at that on just looking at the deal, and does that stack up, and what does that look like? And that's the sort of thing that a broker can do for you.
Yeah. So this might be a silly question, but what products does a mortgage broker advise on?
Yeah. So mortgages and debt instruments. So whether that's secured or unsecured, mortgages, those sorts of things. We also give advice and coaching on, properties and investment and that sort of stuff. But product side, it is debt instruments that we give advice on. We won't give you advice on equity investments and these sorts of things, managed funds and things like that. We will refer you to specialists for that though.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing to probably think about is if you're dealing with somebody from a bank, right, they're getting paid a salary. You could argue still whether there's conflicts there, but there's perceived to be less conflicts than somebody who is working for themselves, getting paid. How much does a mortgage broker cost?
Yeah, good question. So I think it's probably important to first of all point out that someone is always paying. There's nothing's ever for free, right? So a mortgage broker generally doesn't cost the customer money. There are instances where it will, and I'll get to that in a second, but mortgage brokers get paid a percentage of the loan that draws down from the bank where it draws down at. So, if we draw down $1 million loan with ASB will pay us a lump sum for that up front. Different banks pay us different percentages, and some pay us all of it up front, some pay a little bit up front, and some over time, what we call trail commission. So naturally, there's an inherent conflict of interest there, where it's in my best interest to take my customers to the bank that pays me the most money. And the way we get around that is just by being super transparent. So, I will if I give someone advice that they should go to BNZ over ANZ, I will underpin that advice with why. So what is the math? Why are they better off? Maybe they can borrow more or cheaper interest rates or something like that. So I'll explain that. But I will also tell them exactly how much both bank is going to pay me, and a percentage figure and a dollar figure, just so it's very clear what the broker is getting paid. We'll also explain if we're getting any other payments. So if we refer you to someone and they pay us money for that and that sort of thing, which is really common in the market, we're very transparent on that as well.
Great. Okay. And to bring it back to that kind of conflicts point, so obviously there's the conflict around sending people to the bank that pays you the most money. How do you best manage that conflict?
Yeah, so it's really just about being transparent. We are acting with our customers' best interest at all time. So it's never about the broker getting paid. So like I said, we will underpin all of the advice that we give with reasons why we are giving that advice. And the ultimate goal there is so that in 12 months, if your friend says to you, hey, why did you refinance from this bank to ANZ? You can say, hey, here's why I did it, and here's what the benefits were, as opposed to just saying, oh, look, I don't know, my broker told me to, he got paid, I haven't heard from him, right? And we check in at least on an annual basis to make sure the products that we recommended are still relevant and working for you.
Well, and then as rates roll over in the future and those kind of things, there's that point of conflict, touch point as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, completely appreciate what you're saying around how you manage conflicts of interest. There will be some mortgage brokers around New Zealand who do not manage that conflict, like any industry, right? That they will funnel more customers towards the bank that pays them the most. So how, and without going down too much of like a sad rabbit hole or whatever it might be, what are some ways to know that you're dealing with a good mortgage broker?
Yeah, so I think it's about their disclosure. So what information are they disclosing to you with the advice? It's about the touch points. So on the disclosure piece, I guess it's about, were they really clear on what they were getting paid? Was the advice that they gave you underpinned with some reasons why they gave you that advice? And not generic reasons, not, oh, this bank has better online banking than this bank. Okay, most online banking is fairly similar. What does that mean for you? Is it that you can't access a branch because of where you live? So is the online banking actually matter to you? Okay, in that instance, that might be good advice. But generally speaking, the advice needs to be personalized to you, so that you are getting products and banks that fit your needs. And it's about linking your needs and your goals to products and lending. And that's something that you should expect out of a good broker. They should be talking about, what are your long-term goals? What are your needs for that, to meet those goals? And how are the products that I'm offering gonna help you to achieve those goals? And that's something you should be looking for out of your broker as well.
Great. Okay. So that's a really helpful summary of what a mortgage broker does, the benefits, how they get paid, whether you're dealing with a mortgage broker or a bank. And it's tricky for Mike because he's got that conflict that he does this for a job. Really, you're getting better service from a mortgage broker in a lot of cases, not all cases, because there's phenomenal people in the banks, but the bank is paying for that service, not you. You've got the opportunity to go to more providers that will meet your needs. Maybe it's right to jump from one bank to another in certain circumstances. And as Mike said, you get that coaching around each step of the process and what's the right decisions for you.
Yeah, I'll quickly just point out before we wrap it up, there are some instances where brokers do charge fees. If it's really complex, say business lending or something like that, we will charge a fee on that. Or, we may charge what we call a clawback fee if we do all the work for you to get you the loan, and then you pay that loan off a couple of months later, or shift to another bank without getting us the opportunity to have a go at shifting it for you. But we don't see that too often, really.
Great. Okay. So we're going to wrap it up there. That is a summary of the benefits of using a mortgage broker, what mortgage brokers are all about. I would love if Mike mentioned that sometimes in the decision-making process, how close your local branch is. If anybody makes a decision on which bank they work with based off their local branch, please let me know, because I can't imagine many people saying yes to that.
I'm surprised.
I mean, I personally have been to a branch for a long time. We're going to wrap it up there. Before we let you go, please make sure to subscribe to the video. Make sure to give us a review if you're watching this on podcast. Give us a like as well. And we'll see you next week.
Cheers.